Hello everybody! This is your first video in a series of videos on probability. This is the last new thing in geometry. This is our last unit for geometry. So we saved this one for the end because I think it's the most fun. And it's something you all actually have grown up around, right? Because we live in Vegas, which is the land of probability, right? And believe it or not, you probably know a lot more about probability than you think you do. So this video is just going to be about the basics. Then there's a couple videos that come after this that Miss L did. And then you'll see me again for the videos at the end of this unit. Okay. So just in general, what probability is, that's what this is going to be about. I'm going to tell you what probability is, and we're just going to do some basic probability calculations. Again, you've probably seen some of this before, maybe even all of it. You probably did some of it in middle school too. Okay. So if you think about just living your daily life, you've encountered probability in lots of different places. A couple that I can think of are obviously like when you roll a dice or you are, playing a card game, right? All the casinos are built on probability. Or even if you think about putting putting a playlist on shuffle, and then you can say, well, maybe there's 20 songs on your playlist and two of them are by a certain artist. You would say there's like a 10% chance that my phone will pick this song to come next, right? Or a song by this artist to come next. Or a really common place that you see it is when you think about the weather, right? So if you've ever watched the weather or seen a news report, people will say there's a 15% chance that it's going to rain today, or there's an 85% chance that it's going to be cloudy today, right? Things like that. So those are all probabilities, okay? So if you look on the left side of your screen, there's just some basic stuff about probability, okay? So the way that we're gonna talk about probability is that it is how likely for something to happen, right? So how likely is it that it will rain tomorrow, or how likely is it that someone will, send me a text message in the next 5 minutes, things like that. Okay. That thing is your outcome. That's what you want to happen. Okay. And then we have this thing called a sample space, which is the list of all possible outcomes of something. So the way that I like to think about it actually is when you're thinking about rolling a dice, right? So if you think about rolling a dice, there's 6 different numbers that you can roll, right? You can roll a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6, right? So that right there is my sample space. Those are all of the possible outcomes, right? So then here, what we have written here is this P stands for the probability of, and then what you're looking for the probability of is in the parentheses right here. This is the probability of getting an even number. So if you go back up to the sample space, there are 3 even numbers, right? 2, 4, and 6. So the probability that you get an even number is the total number of even numbers you have, which is 3, divided by the total, which is 6. And then you have to reduce that, right? And the biggest number that goes into both 3 and 6 is 3. So this reduces to 1/2, or you could think of that as like 50%. Right? So when I roll a dice, there's a 50% chance that it's going to land on an even number, which kind of makes sense, right? So see down here, number 4, on my page right there. So this is asking me about first to translate to the probability of rolling an odd number into probability notation. And this is obviously in the first page of the probability packet, which I did post for you guys in the school resources document. So if you wanted to follow along with me here, that's where you would look for this one. Sorry, I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Okay, so remember, it's always P with parentheses, and then you put what you're looking for in the middle. So or inside the parentheses. So we're looking for an odd number. Okay, so then let's go back up and say, okay, well, how many odd numbers do I have? And there's 1, 2, 3 odd numbers, right? So I have 3 odd numbers divided by 6 total numbers. So again, you get 1/2 or 50%, right? Which again, kind of makes sense, right? Because it alternates, right? Even odd, even odd. Okay. And then B says, okay, well, what's the probability that you roll a 5? Okay. So remember, it's probability, so capital P with parentheses, and then we want to put what we're looking for in the middle. And we're looking for a 5. So you can put words inside the parentheses, but you can also put numbers if that's what you're looking for. Okay. So then I want to go back up and say, how many 5s are there? And there's only 1 5 in my sample space. So 1 goes on top. And then I'm still dividing by 6 because that's my total number, right? So that is my probability right there. And if you plug that into a calculator to figure out what that actually is, like if you wanted to get something like 50% up here, if you plug that into a calculator, you get 0.166 repeating. So that's like 16.6 repeating percent, or you could round up if you wanted to. All right. So essentially what's going on with all of this probability stuff is summarized right here. And I also have it for you on the right side of your screen. Okay. So what you're looking for when you're doing probability stuff, or when you're calculating probability, what you're actually doing is you are finding this, the number of what you want, right? So like what goes inside your parentheses. So what we want is here. It's what goes inside your parentheses, and then divided by the total number of possible outcomes. So that's your sample space. Okay. One other thing I want you to know is that probability always is going to be between 0 and 1. So I'm sure you've had like parents or coaches or teachers say like, give it 110%, like, something like that. But mathematically, you can't actually do that, right? So probability is always going to be between 0 and 1. So that means it'll be a fraction with a smaller numerator than the denominator, or it'll be a decimal value. Right? Or it could be like 0 and 1. Okay. 0 would mean like a no percent chance, and 1 is like a 100% chance of something. So the way that we tend to think about classifying probability is that if it's a 50-50 shot, that's an even probability, which I'm hoping again kind of makes sense, right? And then if it's greater than 1/2, then we say it's more likely. And then what we say, if it's 100%, it's certain. Okay. If it's less than 1/2, it's unlikely. And the smaller it gets, the less likely it is, until you get to 0, which is like impossible or definitely not going to happen. Okay. All right. So I'm going to scroll down on my page just a little bit. Okay. And I want you guys to try this one, number 5. So pause it for a second, like pause the video, and I'm going to have to also pause the video so that I can go up to a different screen. Okay. But we're looking at a spinner here. So very similar to the spinner that's on the page right here, that goes from 1 to 10, but this one is a 4-sided spinner. So it would look something like this, where you have like A, B, C, and D, right? And it's a spinner, right? So there's like a little, like a little wand, right? Like a lot like like in board games, right? That they make spinners and stuff for board games. So see if you can figure out, okay, what does probability of B mean? Like that's in math language. So translate it to just regular English. Okay. And then what is the actual number? Like what is that probability? And then see if you can classify it based on this scale. Like unlikely, likely, what do you think? Right. So pause the video and I'm going to do the same thing. And then check back and see if you get the same answers as me. All right, so take a look at the right side of your screen. I wrote some answers out for you here, so check your answers against mine. So this probability of B just means the probability of landing on B, right? So remember this, the shortened stuff, that's the math language, right? We want to translate that into actual plain English. And then to actually calculate that probability, that's 1/4. So there's only one of these sections on the spinner that has a B in it. So 1/, and then there's 4 sections on the spinner total. So if you actually divide that in your calculator, you get 0.25, which is 25%. Any of these answers are fine because they all represent the same number. Okay. So now that you've gotten a chance to practice this one, I want you to try 6 and 7. Okay. So similar idea. You have a spinner, but I just want you to try to figure out what those probabilities actually are. And then 7 is asking you about the connection between P and probability of 3. My family is being annoying. They're talking while I'm videoing. Y'all realize that you're like on this recording, right? Like, yeah, Mom, it all comes through. Yeah, but this one's for young children, so sorry. Is your family annoying? Because my family is annoying. I'm sorry that this is happening in the middle. I'm really trying here to be like a professional teacher, and my family is making it very difficult. Yes, it's a video recording. You are in the video recording. Now it's too far. Okay, so I want you to try number 6 and number 7. Number 7 is asking you about the connection between P and then like probability of 3, and then it says probability of 3 with a little dash on it. That is called the complement. Literally translated, it means not. So it means 3 with the little dash means not 3. Okay. Sometimes it's represented, like you can see on this little guy right here. So another way that that's written, one second. So another way that that's written is with a little C. It means complement. So complement is just not something. Okay. So one of the questions, 7, asks you what connection you see between probability of 3 and probability of not 3, which is part D and part E. So a hint for you there is to do some addition. All right. So I'll see y'all in just a second. Okay. Sorry, people. I had to change locations because they were, common spaces. Okay, so I'm hoping that you got a chance to try this problem, number 6 and number 7. So check your answers against mine. So the first one asked me, what's the probability of getting an even number? So there's oops, sorry, my recording paused for an unknown reason. So here, probability of an even number, there are 5 even numbers, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So 5 divided by 10 total, which is 1/2 or 50%, or you could have plugged it into your calculator and got 0.5. And I do have all the answers on the left side of the screen for you as well. Okay, then the second one asks, what's the probability that I get a number less than or equal to 5? There are 5 numbers that are less than or equal to 5. So 1 is less than 5, 2, 3, and 4. Those are all less than 5. And then 5 is equal to 5. So you have all of those together. 5 out of 10. Okay. Next one asks, what's the probability that I get a number that's less than 11? So all of these numbers are less than 11, right? It goes from 1 to 10. Those are all less than 11. So 10 out of 10, which is 1 or 100%, fills the whole spinner up. Okay. This one says, what's the probability that I land on a 3? There's only one 3 on this spinner, so 1 out of 10 total, which is 0.1 or 10%. And you can give probability answers in any of these ways. I think the fraction and the decimal is usually easiest. Okay. Then the last one for number 6 says, what's the probability of not 3? So I have to look at my spinner and say, okay, how many of these numbers are not 3? And 9 of these numbers are not 3. 1, 2, 3 is 3, so I got to skip that one. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? So that's 9 total, right? So 9 out of 10, which is 0.9 or 90%. Okay, so these two things, 3 and not 3, go together, right? So if you think about adding these two together, you get that they equal to 1, right? 0.1 plus 0.9 equals 1. Like 10% and 90% gives you 100%, right? So instead of having to go through for this one, probability of not 3, instead of having to go through and count, okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers that are not equal to 3, I could have just done 1 minus probability of 3, and that would have given me the probability of not 3, right? Because I already knew what probability of 3 was. It's much less counting for me, okay? And the reason that works is because you're dealing with something that has only 2 options, right? In that whole spinner, the number that you get is either 3 or it's not 3, right? Like it's one of those 2. So that means together, those 2 things make up the whole sample space, or like 100% of the possible options. Okay. So the general formula, or like the way that we would write this, is that the probability of the complement of something. So let's say probability of maybe what I'm trying to find is A. So the probability of not A is 1 minus the probability that that thing actually happens, right? So the probability that something does not happen is 1 minus the probability that it actually does happen, okay? So just to summarize for you, main key things from this video is that you need to make sure that you use the probability notation. So that's this, that's these, the P, and then with the parentheses, and you put the event inside of it. Because if you just give me a fraction, I don't really know what you mean, right? Because even if you think back to number 6 here, that I had 2 different events, even and less than or equal to 5, that had the same probability. So you got to make sure you tell me what you're actually finding there, okay? So that's one of the first big things. Second is that the general formula for probability is probability of what you're looking for is the number of what you want divided by the total. And then this third one here is what we just talked about, the complement. So probability of the complement, which is not something, is 1 minus the probability that that thing actually happens. Okay.